The guy suggests a dirty plan. Slip some medicine into Todor's drink, take him back to the hotel where he works, and strip him while he's unconscious. Then, snap a selfie or record a video and send it straight to his wife, Milena. Simple, right? If you can, even spread the word to a few of his co-workers or people in his office so he gets fired from his civil servant job. Hi there, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life event from around the world. This time, our story takes us to the city of Plovdiv in Bulgaria. It's a mind-boggling case that's sure to grab your attention, so stick around till the end. What's the full story behind this unbelievable case? Let's dig deeper and find out. Before we jump into the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, share this story with your friends. It helps us out a lot. Now, here's how it goes. Milena, born in 1990, was the oldest of 3 siblings. Originally from Pazardzik, Bulgaria, she moved to the nearby city of Plovdiv in 2016. Milena worked as a primary school teacher at a specialized school. We'll keep the name confidential. She was also a civil servant, dedicated and well-respected in her field. In 2017, she met Todor, a man 2 years her senior who worked in the regional development department. Todor was also a civil servant, and the two hit it off quickly, starting a relationship that same year. At the time, Todor's job had him traveling across Bulgaria for various development projects, so their relationship was long distance. Despite the challenges, their friends and family adored them as a couple, often encouraging them to get married. But life had other plans. Their busy schedules, combined with the pandemic in 2020, delayed everything. Finally, on April 20, 2021, after some recovery in the situation, they tied the knot. Milena was 30, and Todor was 32. After the wedding, Todor continued working in Pazardzik, but soon applied for a transfer to Plovdiv to live with Milena. Moving wasn't an option for Milena since a teaching position was specialized and not transferable. So the couple agreed that Todor would be the one to relocate. For the first 9 months of their marriage, they continued living apart. Then, in January 2022, Todor's transfer came through, and he moved to Plovdiv. The couple was finally able to live together and enjoy their married life side by side. But life, as always, had its ups and downs. At Milena's school, there was a 12-year-old boy named Boyan who was notorious for being difficult. He had a habit of misbehaving and even fighting with teachers. His parents were called in multiple times, but nothing seemed to work. Milena, being a dedicated teacher, took special care to handle him, even though he became a constant challenge. In June 2022, Boyan caused a major incident. He threw stones at a friend's head and used foul language toward Milena. This time, she lost her patience and pinched him as a reprimand. The boy cried and told his parents. But instead of his parents showing up at the school, it was his 19-year-old sister Victoria who stormed in. She angrily confronted Milena, pointing fingers and even threatening her. Victoria claimed that pinching was a form of violence and said she would report Milena to the police. Milena, however, wasn't intimidated. The school had clear policies that allowed minor physical discipline, like pinching or leg slapping, in extreme cases where a student's behavior became harmful to others. A meeting was held with the school's administration, Milena, and representatives of the parents. After reviewing the situation, the decision was clear. Milena's actions were justified, and the school stood by her. Boyan's behavior had crossed the line too many times, and the ultimate decision was to expel him from the school. Victoria wasn't about to let things go. Furious with Milena, she held a grudge and wanted revenge. Victoria, who worked as a motorcycle salesperson, started digging through Milena's social media accounts and bombarding her with insulting messages. But it didn't stop there. With the help of her friend Radistina, a 21-year-old, she tracked down Milena's address. The two began harassing her by throwing feces at her front door and even tossing stones onto her roof at night. Their obsession didn't end with Milena. They soon learned that her husband, Todor, often hung out at a nearby cafe for coffee or beer, not far from Victoria's workplace. During one of these visits, Victoria and Radistina found an opportunity to introduce themselves to Todor through one of his friends, who happened to be Radistina's neighbor. Todor, however, was far from what they expected. He had heard about Milena's troubles with a misbehaving student who was expelled but had no idea that the boy was Victoria's younger brother, or that Victoria was now trying to sabotage his life. Todor was a loyal husband. He adored Milena and had no interest in betraying her in any way. He didn't flirt, didn't entertain random texts from strangers, and outright refused invitations from his friends to attend parties with questionable company. His idea of fun was simple: coffee or beer with friends, nothing more. But Victoria and Radistina weren't giving up. They tried to use their connection with Todor to hurt Milena, subtly tempting him with friendly advances. Todor, oblivious to their intentions, treated them politely but kept everything casual and platonic. This only frustrated Victoria further. Her plan to ruin Milena's marriage was going nowhere. Enter Risto, a 21-year-old hotel waiter and a close friend of Radistina. Risto came up with a far more sinister plan. He suggested they drug Todor's drink, take him to the hotel where he worked, strip him while he was unconscious, and take incriminating photos or videos. The idea was to send these to Milena, destroy her trust in her husband, and humiliate Todor by spreading the evidence among his co-workers. "That'll do it," Risto said confidently. "Milena will be crushed. We'll break her heart, her trust, and her whole life." Victoria and Radistina were sold on the idea. It was bold, dirty, and seemed like a guaranteed way to get their revenge. They began carefully planning, even purchasing sleeping pills to carry out the scheme. On the night of July 4, 2022, they put their plan into action. Victoria, Radistina, and Risto joined Todor and his friends at the cafe, sticking around until about 10 p.m. Once the sleeping pills had taken effect, they hailed a taxi and brought an unconscious Todor to the hotel where Risto worked, arriving around 11 p.m. The first part of their plan had worked flawlessly. But what would happen next would change everything. At first, one of Todor's friends wanted to take him home, but Radistina quickly stepped in and stopped him. "Don't worry, we'll take care of it," she said. The friend, assuming they were just being helpful, reluctantly agreed. As planned, they took Todor to the hotel, placed him on the bed, and stripped off his clothes. Victoria and Radistina then staged photos and videos, posing suggestively as if they were hooking up with him. Meanwhile, Risto was in charge of snapping pictures and recording everything. Once they were done, they brought the still unconscious Todor back to his house, leaving him on the doorstep. The next morning, Milena found her husband there, still unconscious. Panicked, she rushed him to Plovdiv General Hospital, fearing something terrible had happened. Doctors later confirmed that Todor had been given a dangerously high dose of sleeping pills. Meanwhile, one of Todor's friends, who retrieved his car from the cafe parking lot where it had been left overnight, kept quiet about what had happened. He didn't dare mention the girls who had taken Todor, afraid it would only make Milena angrier. 3 days later, Milena's phone started blowing up with photos of Todor in compromising positions with Victoria and Radistina. The images broke her heart and filled her with jealousy. Todor was just as shocked and confused, unable to understand how this had happened. But Milena quickly connected the dots. This had to be Victoria's revenge for her brother's expulsion from school. She refused to believe her husband had done anything wrong. Things escalated when photos and videos of Todor in the hotel with the two girls were sent to the school principal and other teachers. It was an attempt to humiliate both Milena and Todor. Fortunately, the school staff was smart enough to see through it, recognizing it as a revenge plot. Victoria didn't stop there. She went so far as to call Milena, claiming she had been secretly involved with Todor for 3 months and was now pregnant with his child. She demanded accountability and threatened to release even more explicit photos and videos if they didn't meet her demands. She also hinted at getting both of them fired from their jobs. Todor denied everything and insisted they report the harassment to the police. But Milena, surprisingly calm, urged him to stay patient. "This is just a childish game," she said. "Don't let them get to you. There's nothing to worry about." In his search for answers, Todor eventually mentioned a young man who had been with Victoria during the incident. This man, believed to be the one who filmed everything that night, became a key figure in uncovering the truth. With some help from Todor's friend who had been at the cafe, the young man's identity was revealed: Risto. As it turned out, Milena knew Risto's sister, Galina, who owed her money. Galina reached out to Milena, wanting to meet her, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. On July 13, 2022, the three of them met, and Risto broke down in tears. He hadn't known that his sister was deeply indebted to Milena. $5,000 borrowed for their parents' medical expenses during the pandemic. Only a fraction of the amount, about 10%, had been repaid over the past year. Risto apologized profusely, overwhelmed with guilt. Milena, calm and forgiving, assured him that she held no grudge. She only asked one thing: is Victoria really pregnant, like she claims? Sobbing, Risto confessed everything. He revealed the entire plan Victoria and Radistina had concocted, including the fact that the pregnancy was a complete lie. The revelation was a huge relief for Milena. In a show of generosity, she even told Galina that her family's remaining debt was forgiven. "Don't worry about it," she said kindly. "I know you've been through a lot." Meanwhile, Risto's guilt consumed him. Tensions grew between him and his two so-called friends, Victoria and Radistina. When the girls found out that Milena now knew the full story, including the fake pregnancy, they were furious. Their anger only fueled their twisted obsession with hurting Milena. They decided to double down on their plan. This time, they vowed to drug Todor again, take him back to the hotel, and go even further to ruin his reputation. Their goal? To make sure one of them actually became pregnant, leaving no doubt in Milena's mind that her husband was unfaithful. On the night of July 29, 2022, Victoria and Radistina confronted Risto at the restaurant where he worked, demanding the sleeping pills he had kept from the first incident. Risto refused outright, telling them he wanted nothing more to do with their scheme. The situation quickly escalated. Victoria lashed out, hitting Risto with her bag, while Radistina removed her high heel and struck him on the head. Risto, finally snapping, punched both of them in self-defense. The fight spiraled out of control, with Victoria storming into the restaurant's kitchen, grabbing a knife, and stabbing Risto repeatedly in the shoulder. Fortunately, the restaurant's security intervened just in time, breaking up the brawl before things could get even worse. Risto was rushed to Plovdiv General Hospital for emergency treatment. Though his injuries were severe, he survived the attack. Victoria and Radistina, on the other hand, were taken into police custody shortly after. At their initial trial, Victoria and Radistina claimed that Risto had started the fight, attacking them one by one. However, surveillance footage from the back of the hotel told a very different story. The video showed Victoria hitting him with her bag and elbows, while Radistina used the pointed toe of her sharp shoe and even spat at him, triggering the whole commotion. Risto appeared to have fought back in self-defense. At the time, the restaurant was technically closed since it was almost 11 p.m., but staff were still on standby for any last-minute room service requests. The area was quiet, with no one around to break up the fight until Victoria grabbed a knife, and Risto's screams echoed through the hotel. Two security guards stationed at the front lobby heard the commotion and rushed to the back, arriving just in time to stop things from escalating further. The investigation that followed revealed Victoria and Radistina's earlier plot against Todor, drugging him, staging photos, and spreading false rumors about a pregnancy to Milena's school. Thankfully, no one had believed their lies, but Victoria's anger only grew when her plan to humiliate Milena failed. Determined to seek revenge, she became even more reckless. Risto, now filled with guilt, chose to side with Milena and came clean about everything. He exposed the truth behind the girls' schemes, from the staged photos to the fake pregnancy. According to the girls' lawyer, their actions were fueled by anger over Boyan's expulsion, which Victoria blamed on Milena. Radistina, as Victoria's close friend, joined in to help. The lawyer argued that their youth and immaturity led them to act impulsively, claiming they weren't capable of thinking clearly in the heat of the moment. He urged the court to consider lighter penalties, such as community service, instead of prison time. However, the prosecutor argued otherwise. The girls had gone too far, assaulting Risto, drugging Todor, and spreading malicious lies about Milena and her husband. Their actions weren't just impulsive, they were calculated and dangerous. Without significant consequences, there was a risk they would repeat their behavior. Although Victoria and Radistina cried in court, pleading for leniency, their tears failed to move the judge. It was clear they weren't crying out of genuine remorse but out of fear of facing prison time. On January 13, 2023, the Plovdiv Provincial Court delivered its verdict. Victoria, then 20 years old, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for assaulting Risto, while Radistina, aged 22, received 1 year. Additionally, the court ruled on the case involving Todor. Victoria and Radistina were found guilty of attempted misconduct, assault using a dangerous substance, sleeping pills, and spreading false information. They each received an additional 6 months in prison. The judge ruled that their actions, drugging Todor, stripping him, and staging photos, constituted harassment and a violation of personal dignity under the law. Risto, despite his cooperation and efforts to make amends, was also sentenced to 4 months in jail for his involvement in the initial plot. Milena and Todor had actually requested that the charges against Victoria and Radistina for the second case be dropped. They felt pity for the young women and didn't want them to carry a criminal record for the rest of their lives. However, the court decided to let justice take its course, especially as public sentiment demanded accountability. In the end, Milena and Todor accepted the court's decision, hoping it would serve as a deterrent for Victoria and Radistina, and perhaps even a chance for them to reflect and change. What lessons can we take from this story? You can comment below.